Day, everybody. My name is Dennis Collier, and although I now teach at the very prestigious, by the way, post-secondary learning institution known as the University of Toronto, this was not always the lot in life of the Collier family. Historically, we were lumberjacks. In fact, my father represents the very first generation of our family that learned how to read and write. You see, things like schools, as well as other luxuries, things like electricity, running water, getting to see doctors or dentists. These were not things that were part of the universe of people who made their living by knocking down trees with axes in the Newfoundland lumber woods. My grandfather, all my grandfather's brothers, my great-grandfather, all lumberjacks. Not surprisingly, we have hardly any photographs that exist from that era. Again, there's no money for foolish things like cameras. This represents the only known photograph from that era. Now, I would never ever dream of comparing myself to my father or my grandfather or my great-grandfather, but I can honestly say I always felt like this background, this identity was part of the family, to the point where this painting, which we had made of my father sawing wood in our backyard, hangs in the family living room to this day. And I'll give you one final story to put in perspective this type of place in which I grew up. The story actually involves this backyard, and it involves the very first time that I took my wife to visit my hometown. Of course, she was my girlfriend at the time, future wife. But up to this point, she grew up on the mainland. She had never, ever set foot on the Isle of Newfoundland. She had heard the kind of place in which I grew up, but she had never seen it before. And the story begins when we're in the car driving south down the road heading into my hometown. And I say the road because, of course, there is only one road, which was very appropriately, by the way, named the main road. And actually, that's not exactly true. There was a secondary road on the back of this road in which we could access my hometown, which was also very appropriately named the back line. But anyway, we were driving down the main road, and as you're driving south down the main road heading into my hometown, the view is actually quite magnificent, if I may say so. Off to the east, there's these rolling, green, wooded hills all the way down as you're driving south down the road, and I could see my wife was kind of looking at these beautiful hills. And as she's looking out the window, she asked me the question, "Dennis, what's on the other side of those hills?" Now, I had never really thought about this, but I knew the answer, so I said, well, nothing. Well, I guess the ocean, eventually, if you walk far enough through those trees over those hills, you'll hit the ocean. That's what you'll find. So anyway, this planted a seed kind of in her head about the kind of place she was driving into. The second part of this story happens, as I said, in the backyard. Later that evening, my wife and I are sitting as the sun is setting, overlooking the forest, which is immediately at the end of our backyard. And my wife is looking at this mass of trees looming before her, and she turns to me and says, "Dennis, you grew up in the boonies." And I was very offended by that. I had never in life, believe it or not, never crossed my mind that I grew up in the boonies. So what could I do other than seek the authority on this matter? I knew one person would definitively have an answer as to whether or not I grew up in the boonies, and that was, of course, my father. So he was upstairs. So I went up to speak to my father about this, and I said, "Dad, Julia thinks that we live in the boonies." To my father, very stoic man, was straight-faced, no response whatsoever. So I pried a little bit deeper, and I said, "Dad, you know those woods that are right on the edge of our backyard. Again, folks, if you're not following, it's our patio. It's a backyard, a normal backyard, then the woods, okay? So I asked my father, I said, Dad, those woods at the edge of our backyard? Let's say you decided to start walking through those woods. Dad, how many kilometers of wilderness could you walk through before you hit something? And my father, again, very stoically gives the answer, about 130 kilometers. So after he gave that answer, I said, you know what? Maybe my wife is onto something. If you can open up your back door, go through your backyard, and then walk through 130 kilometers of wilderness, maybe you did grow up in the boonies, but proudly so. And so considering all that, it is with a great deal of pride that I can present this conversation on the topic of timber sports with an athlete who's also from the East Coast, by the way. And he so wonderfully represents the very ethos of all things lumberjacking. He's also pretty darn good at the competing stuff too, by the way. Here is Ben's bio.
Ben Cumberland burst onto the international timber sports scene by winning the Rookie World Championship in 2016. He was a bronze medalist at the Team World Championships in 2018 and 2023, but the grandest stage of all for a timber sport athlete is the individual World Championships. Ben came fourth in 2019 and then in 2024. After winning the Canadian Championship, he captured the bronze medal, meaning at the time of this interview, Ben Cumberland is the third best timber sport athlete walking the face of planet Earth.
Ben Cumberland, please tell us where you were born and raised.
So I was born in Fredericton, New Brunswick, raised in the small little community of Keswick Ridge, just outside Fredericton, about 20 minutes. And currently I live in Elmwood, which is just outside of Woodstock, New Brunswick, in Midwest New Brunswick.
Why timber sports?
I mean, the simple answer is why not? But I grew up as part of kind of a timber sports wood chopping family. I have ancestors on my dad's side. His mother grew up in a family of, I think, 12 kids, and her dad was one of the best log drivers on the rivers of New Brunswick. I think the Nashwauk River, to be exact. So it's kind of in my blood. And then Dad competed at the University of New Brunswick on the woodsman team there. And he just, there's something about timber sports and wood chopping that's just addictive. And he got bit by the bug really bad. So after he graduated university, he got married to my mom, and they had us and just brought us along to the competitions. However, growing up, one thing that I really appreciate is he always made time for us, and there was never any feeling that he was putting lumberjacking or timber sports above us as kids. So at I think it was right around 97, 98 when my third sibling came along, or I guess technically my second sibling, but the three of us Cumberland kids. He hung up the blades and sold some gear because he's all or nothing. So he actually started coaching us in baseball and hockey, and we just sort of had fun with other sports. But then right around 2000, when they tried to get wood chopping into the Olympics as an Olympic sport, he started back up. And then we were old enough, myself and my brother Nathan, we were old enough to kind of catch a little bit of the bug, and there was never anything super competitive. He never really super pushed us to do it. It's just kind of like, if you guys want to, I'll supply you with, the gear or the time, training, whatever. But the other thing he supplied us with was the VHS tapes of all the old competitions down in the States and down in New Zealand and Australia. And so we developed a love for it that way. And then right around 16, I'd been competing for about 4 or 6 years at that point, just kind of in amateur divisions, whatnot. And right around 16, God kind of flipped a switch, and I just competed really well at a competition and did really well in a couple chops. And I'm kind of like, oh man, this is what I want to do. And then just started training and competing, and I've been really blessed at the sport. And to reach the level I'm at is still kind of surreal because I never thought in a million years I'd be where I'm at.
It's a pretty awesome story, Ben, and we're going to get into the story for sure. In fact, it's such an awesome story, we're going to have to bypass some of it. There's so much we could talk about, but we're going to focus, our story on the 2024 World Championships, in the individual event, I should say, which basically for non-timber sport fans out there, this is the Olympic Games, this is the Stanley Cup, this is the best timber sport athletes in the world, this is the show. In 2024, you're competing, representing Canada. We're going to focus our story there. Glenn, we got some great clips we're going to show. We're going to go through each of the disciplines. And some of these things, they're unbelievable, really. Wait till you see, folks, the stuff these athletes do. We're going to have some videos of each of the 6 disciplines. But before we get there, Ben, let's just take a little bit of time, and talk about the process, maybe like the recent process, shall we say, of getting ready to compete at the 2024 World Championships. The training, let's talk about that. So if I could throw an open-ended question to you, just describe the training that goes into this. Maybe like how far back you start, whatever comes to your mind when talking about getting ready to compete at the World Timber Sport Championships.
So training for me is kind of cyclical. Generally, at least in the local competitions, the last competition is usually October. And right around then, we've been to, depending on how far you want to drive and travel and things like that, you can make it a year-round thing. But for me and my family, generally we put the axes and saws away, and we spend a few months just kind of resting, relaxing. It keeps it fresh. And generally about this time, January, we start back into the weight room. So it tends to be a lot of just raw strength building, because as anyone will tell you, most anything athletic, you want general physical strength to help. And then we'll work a bit, like this last year, I spent a lot of time working on mobility. So I was a little tight in some spots, and actually got a subscription to GoWOD and worked on mobility, because that was one thing that I felt like I was really lacking. So it was weight training in January. I got a good buddy with a garage gym and some barbells and weights of my own.
Can you say like how many, like how often a week, let's say?
Normally it's about 3 days a week for strength training. I'm also a husband and a father, so I have other priorities as well. So I want to make sure that stays balanced. In 2023 at the World Championships, I had kind of a little bit of a rough go. We can kind of touch on that when we get to the competition part, but I was pretty focused on trying to get back to the World Championships in 2024. So had kind of a singular goal, and I'm very thankful that my wife was also on board with me as far as that goes. So about 3 days a week, just raw strength, the big 3. Deadlift, bench, and squat, and then just kind of accessory work to round out the mobility side of things as well. Then, after 2 or 3 months of that, start building into like explosive strength, fast twitch muscle fibers, kind of your anaerobic strength stuff. And then that's, again, still about 3 days a week. And then, March, April, I'll start doing event training. So I'll start swinging an axe and running a crosscut saw and running a chainsaw.
So you haven't touched the axe yet, eh?
No.
These first few months are, because your sport is very, very, I would call it a very, very sport-specific skill set. Mm-hmm. But you're building the base January, February type of deal. We don't need to be too specific, but like right. Or too exact. You're building the strength. Then you touch the saws and the axes, give or take, you say March.
Yeah. So generally speaking, the first competition will be like May, June. The other thing, like there's a lot of it that's muscle memory. So when you first start in the timber sports and wood chopping, there's a lot of things you have to train your muscles to remember and how to do, and the mechanics and the physics and things like that. Thankfully, like I've been doing this almost like 2 decades, which is kind of weird to say, but so it's more or less a tune-up. I need to bring my cardio back, like for chopping, and things and sawing and things like that. But yeah, March, April, I usually start swinging an axe. And then in through the summer, there's not a ton of event training unless I developed a bad habit through the winter. Um, Last year in 2023, I had to kind of adjust because I bulked up a little bit more, got a bit more strength, and my body wasn't quite used to competing with the additional strength kind of, center of gravity sort of stuff. And this year I just kept the event training going through the summer, kept a bit of strength training going through the summer. It was only like once or twice a week at the most, because we always say like the event, like a competition, is usually like 10 days to 2 weeks worth of training, just because you learn so much when you're actually competing. So yeah, and then very blessed to come away with the win in nationals in Canada. And then it was what was the training? It was get sick and stop training entirely for a month, and then
Doesn't sound good.
no, it's not ideal.
I didn't know that part of the story.
Oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff with my story.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, thankfully, I was my doctors worked with me, and we got sorted things back out, so that I still had about a month and a half of event training and weight training and cardio and mobility. I still did the mobility stuff while I was sick, but just kind of a little bit of a lung thing that took away all of my cardio. So anyway, aside from that, yeah, it was about a month and a half, 2 months after nationals, and just trained and tuned up, and then when we got overseas, we had a training camp with Team Switzerland and Team USA in Aigle, Switzerland, and that was basically just knock the rust off, adjust to the time zone, and then.
And this is just before
France.
the World Championship. So we're talking about November or October.
Yeah, so we flew out of Canada on the 3rd of November and had a training camp Monday, Tuesday. The 3rd of November was Sunday, and then we had training camp Monday, Tuesday, a little bit of Wednesday. Drove from Switzerland to France, and then competed in the Team World Championships on Friday, and then I competed in the individual on Saturday.
And that's the World Championships. We are going to talk about this event because it's super, super interesting, super, super dramatic also, folks. So stay tuned. I got a couple other questions about the training, Ben, before you get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned the phrase bulk up. That came into your description there. And when I was watching these championships, I was really quite impressed by some of the just the size of some of these athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Then Team Australia walked out. Okay. And I say, it looks to me like a football offensive line.
Yep.
My question is it an advantage being large? These guys, 250, 240, this is the kind of body weight of a lot of these guys, not all. But I want you to speak about the advantages or maybe some of the disadvantages of being that big of an athlete in timber sports.
So it's funny because for the longest time, a lot of the people that we asked about, like, is it an advantage to be, to have that much size? And a lot of times it was, you have more weight, you have more weight behind the axe, or you're just in general stronger, which I have experienced myself. The larger in size I used to be like 165, 175 until I went to college at age 22, and then went up to 230, and now I'm sitting right around 250 on a decent day. And the size is definitely an advantage as far as, strength and lately
force behind the axe.
Yeah, force behind the axe. That's a big one. Another one is just center of gravity. It can kind of situate you a little bit better. As far as disadvantages, the only time that I've ever really encountered it not being an advantage is in the springboard.
Oh yeah, folks, wait till you see this. If you have not seen that, wait till you see this thing.
We call it tree surfing.
It's wild, man. We're gonna have a look. It's unbelievable, this stuff. Anyway, go on.
Well, so the only time that it can really be a disadvantage that I've ever seen or experienced is in the springboard, and generally like a perfect springboard pocket, which is what you put your springboard into, is like 4 hits. And sometimes the bigger guys have to go 6. Sometimes they go 4 because they're strong enough that they can do a perfect 4-hit pocket. But then it could just be a little bit of cardio as well. Sometimes when you're that size, sometimes cardio isn't quite a focus in training. But for the most part, a lot of the events that we do are anaerobic in nature.
Totally.
It's just a sprint, right?
Very much so.
You do the majority of them holding your breath. Now, I don't recommend that because you're likely going to pass out. However, it is possible.
But you're right on the money, Ben. That would be my physiological analysis. I would concur exactly. You're in an anaerobic sport entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Last question before we get to the World Championships. I'm a dietitian by trade, Ben. So I'm just going to, again, on the topic of the training, and
Right.
we can also tie in the body weight issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask very open-ended. In your training towards getting ready to be the best timber sport athlete you can possibly be, the kind of issues surrounding nutrition that might be relevant to you that immediately come to mind would be what?
Basically, I'm just eating what I can to make me feel the best as far as operation and function. Like I find I operate best in a lower carb state, not entirely carnivore or keto, just because there's so much intensity with competition and the events that we do and training. So, I'm not shy. I love bread. Like, I love grains, and honestly, I'm just a foodie. I could be entirely non-discretionary with what I eat. My wife calls me the human carburetor at times. But
lovingly.
Oh, very, very much. Yeah. She it makes her laugh because I there are times where I'm just not picky at all. However, trying not to carry too much excess weight, try to just feel better. And I just find that personally, I just operate better on lower carbs. So I just kind of stick with that. And then, through the competition, I'll have like amino acid or like the goo packs or whatever. And that just kind of keeps me rolling. But as far as preparation, I tended to stay in a little bit of a lower carb state.
Excellent stuff. All right, we can't wait any longer. Let's get to the stuff here. Let's look at these World Championships. I'm going to do a quick share of the screen here, and through the miracle of technology, I think we're going to have it appear magically. Can you see that, Ben, on your screen?
Yep, I can.
All right, so folks, here we are. We are now at the World Championships 2024. The first event we're going to look at, Ben, is called the underhand chop. Before we get a look at it, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what is the underhand chop, event number 1 of 6 here at the World Championships?
The majority of timber sports comes from a historical base. So the underhand chop is basically simulating bucking a tree into length to send it to the mill. Back before they had chainsaws, back before they even had crosscuts. An axe is a pretty timeless either workpiece or weapon, depending on how you use it. So all this is just simulating cutting a tree in half. As we stepped up to this, I'm just trying to have fun with this event. Last 2023, I didn't actually make it out of the first round. I didn't have a great underhand. I disqualified in the stock saw, and then I didn't have a great standing block, which put me just out of the bubble to make it into the second round. So I'm just trying to stay loose, have fun. My brother Nathan was here. He was helping me out backstage, and my parents were also there in the crowd as well. They come on vacation, so we're just trying to stay light with it and not get too serious. So I was just ready to try. The wood looked like it was going to be really soft as well. So when you get a nice piece of wood with a razor sharp axe, it's a lot of fun.
All right, we're going to have a look at this, and we might hear some more about a few warm-ups happening here, but while we're waiting, let's talk about the axe.
Yeah, so it's I'm trying to think. It's like between 5 and 8 pounds. It's just.
By the way, sorry to cut you off. Your competitor's a pretty intimidating-looking dude, man.
Yeah, Cody Steers is an animal, and he's been winning a lot of the big chops down under.
So anyway, back to your axe. Sorry about that.
It's just polished steel. It's not stainless, and it's also razor sharp. That's like I could actually shave shave my face with it. But it goes on an ash or hickory handle, and the axe itself comes from New Zealand. There's Tuatai is the best axe maker in the world. They've been number one. Most of the competitors use theirs, and then it's hand ground. So there's a lot of different axe grinders throughout the globe. I think the one I was using in this heat was done by Andrew Kelly of Australia, who actually competed against at the Rookie World Championships in 2016. Fun fact. Great dude, and the axe was cutting it really, really well.
And Ben, how much individualization do the athletes do with their axe? Do they vary from one athlete to the next?
Absolutely. Every bit of gear that an athlete owns is tuned to the athlete, but right from how they like the handle in the axe to how the axe is stoned, the size, the shape, the dimensions of the axe, things like that. Almost every piece of gear that we use in timber sports, aside from the stock saw, is personal to the athlete.
Very interesting. We're going to start watching some chopping here in 1 second. I'm just going to add my little thing here from the world of sport science. What we're going to see here, put it this way, there's a couple of different things about timber sports that I think are very, very, how do I say, Ben, transferable to other sports and other things in life. And it has to do with they call it the planes at which the human body can move through. There's three of them, basically. The first one is the least interesting. We call it the frontal plane. So, Ben, if you can imagine like a piece of glass severing your body this way, as you see, passing down through the top of your head. Any motion through this plane, we call it movement through the frontal plane. The exercises that might go into that are things like jumping jacks or what else? Like side shuffles in basketball. So the glass, you got a pane of glass, and you can only move through that pane of glass. Picture there's arrows pointing at the ends of the glass. If I'm making this clearer, I don't know. But that's how it works. And if you move outside that plane, the glass shatters. So that's one of the three. What we're seeing here is movement through what they call the sagittal plane, which is basically front to back. And Ben, this is, of course, now, not just sports, this is super useful to life in general. Moving things forward or backward,
right?
That is useful. That is applicable. And when we see the power, the degree to which you guys swing these things through this plane, the sagittal plane, generating, my goodness, man, think about it, power generation frontwards. It does not take too much of an imagination to think of how this could be transferable or useful to other sports, for sure, and other things in life, I think. So that's enough out of me. Let's watch, and as you're going here, but get ready, folks, because these are, as Ben mentioned, before I could even mention, we're talking about anaerobic activities here. This is not marathon running. It goes by pretty quick. I think this is going to take, like, what, Ben, 15 seconds?
Yeah.
You haven't done your first chop yet, so maybe you could just, as we're watching here, you can talk about what's happening.
Yep.
And I'm going to hit play. Here we go. First swings of the axe.
So when we mark our blocks up, we draw lines that kind of guide us. So the prime angle is about 45 degrees, and you're just trying to follow it through as best you can and space your axe. Cody had a phenomenal chop. Spacing your axe just means utilizing as much of the axe blade as possible to cover the block in as few hits as you can. And it's there's a lot of explosiveness in this. You got to try to snap your knees and crack your wrists right at the right time, and then all while trying to do it quickly and and have
powerfully, accurately, balance, all kinds of stuff going on here with the underhand chop. And again, do you guys know? I'm going to assume you do know. There's a number of actual hits of the axe. Like, is it a chop per second that it works out to usually, like 15 chops in that neighborhood, Ben? Maybe plus or minus a little bit. But when you're going in there, like, are you cognizant of the number of swings that you're doing?
Sometimes yes, and it all kind of depends on the first couple hits that you put in the block. The first couple hits I put in that piece of wood, the first chip, or we call it a slab, it basically just blew right off the block, and in the fraction of a second. I'm like, okay, this is a nice stick of wood. I need to keep my axe going. I can probably do it in 8. And the other thing is you saw the little flat spots that we were standing on. We also test our axes. We get a test block, and then we also test our axes in the footholds so that we know how specific axes are going to respond to the actual block that we're going to chop. And like I said, I knew it was going to be a pretty good piece of wood. So I'm thinking I can probably get this size block in about 8 hits. And then once I do my first round, so I put 2 on one side, 2 on the other, and I kind of see where I'm at as far as like close to center. And then I put one hit down on the bottom, and then I put another one on the other side, and that's just a chip. One side is your power side, one side is your chip side, and the chip side basically just clears the wood so that your power side can actually drive further in the block. And I put 8 hits in the front of that, and then I put 7 hits in the back. So it came off. I mean, that was one of my best times in that diameter size wood. And everything kind of went well. Generally speaking, a good cadence is 1 hit per second. Some people swing a lot faster than that. I know like Ferris Fawn from Sweden swings a lot faster than that. Nate Hodges from the US swings faster than that. And Braden Meyer swings faster than that. And again, like it just kind of comes down to what works best for you as far as chopping. Some people can't swing really, really fast, but they can, lay the power right into each swing and maximize it that way. And then some people aren't quite as good with their axe placement, so they need to be faster and kind of, put in more hits.
But as you can see there already, and this is only the first of 6 disciplines, what I was talking about earlier about the sport-specific skills, and you mentioned there the placement of the axe, Ben, like the technique of swinging that thing and hitting it where you need to hit. Can you talk a bit about that component, the finesse component, okay, and how it jives with just swinging this thing as hard as you can? Obviously, you'd like to swing it hard, but, to what is the balance? To what degree are you trying to balance the technique, the finesse, which is just swinging as hard as you can? Which of the two is the more prevalent, the more important of the two?
Well, I'm going to take the easy route out and say they both are important.
Sure.
But no, in all seriousness, you're trying to be as efficient as possible. So you want each hit to follow in behind the hit that was in that location before it. So you're not recutting wood fibers that were already cut. You're trying to maximize the penetration of the axe into the block. And so when you're training, you try to go about 70-80%. For me, I always try
70-80% of how hard you can swing the thing, you mean?
Both how hard and how fast, because you're trying to find that perfect combination of each, and that perfect combination of power and speed is different for different competitors. I always try to we call it racing a block, but basically I'm swinging as fast as I can, trying to train my fast twitch muscle fibers to be prepared to race a block. And I'm not as concerned about technique, because generally when we're training, we're always exaggerating technique. We're trying to have as pure of technique as possible, so that when we actually go pedal to the metal in a competition, anyone that I've ever talked to in the chopping world, whenever you are actually trying to race, there's a decent amount of technique that kind of goes out the window, but what you have ingrained in your muscle memory is what will keep your technique pure and try to find that perfect blend of speed and finesse.
By the way, folks, I have it on fairly good authority. We're speaking with one of the best technicians in the world when it comes to wood chopping. So take it from him. Now, Ben, I got one last question. We're going to move on to the second discipline here in 1 second. I do have one more question, though, more about the physiology.
Yeah.
Tell us how you're feeling, if you can, by the end of this, because your time there, we can still see on the screen there, 15.5 seconds. That is certainly, Ben, that's plenty of time for the accumulation of lactic acid, more specifically the hydrogen ions, to exert their detrimental effect. Can you just explain by the end of this the level of exertion you're feeling, the level of fatigue? What are you feeling by the end of the underhand chop?
For me, I tend to feel most of the lactic acid build up in my hands, and it tends to be because I tend to grip the axe handle a bit too tight. So I'm definitely feeling it in my forearms. At this point, I was feeling, pretty okay. Yeah, that was basically just got all the nerves out, or the adrenaline out of my system, more or less. And I'm also, at this point, I know I'm going to be in the first heat of the next event, and the next event is a lot more of a finesse event. So I'm really just trying to breathe and try to bring my heart rate down. We've always anytime you're at a competition like this is a fairly short competition, the Timber Sports World Championship. The local shows go all day, so you're just constantly running adrenal spikes throughout the day as you try to ramp up for each event, and then cool down, and then you have a bit more to go. So right now I'm standing here while he gives us the thumbs up, but then as soon as I get backstage, I'm just kind of like shaking things out. I feel like, I did a 15-second sprint, basically, 15-second sprint with deadlifts, I guess, more or less. But just trying to shake things out, trying to get my breathing and heart rate under control.
And you're getting ready to go again pretty quick.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just jump ahead then to that next event. So we got number 2 coming up. I'm going to flash forward here. Oh, because this is very shortly thereafter. You jump right back out. Now,
extremely short.
Let's just go over that for a second, actually. Oh, and just in case, I don't know if we've set the whole stage properly. There's 12 competitors, right? There's 12
Correct.
guys?
Yeah.
12 guys, 6 events. You finish this one. You're the last guy in the underhand chop, last 2 guys?
Yeah.
And you're the first in the stock saw. Is that right?
Correct. That's affirmative, yes.
Ben, why was that? That doesn't seem like it's fair.
So they seed the first 3 events in the World Championships based on your national placings. So nationally, in Kelowna, back in August, I had the fastest underhand time at our national championships, which, when compared to the rest of the 12 guys that were there representing their respective countries from around the world, my time was apparently second fastest in the world for qualifying. Now, there's a lot of things that go into it, wood species and different things like that. But then I actually had a pretty bad stock saw at nationals. So my stock saw was second slowest in the world for guys that qualified here. So they just took the times for each athlete and then put that into the spreadsheet that did up the heats for the first 3 events at Timber in the World Championship, and then this is just how it landed. So it's not that it's really unfair. I mean, some people could say it is, but that's just kind of how the cookie crumbled, really.
I get you. That's good to know about the structure of the competition. And as you say, this is more of a finesse event anyway.
Very much.
We're going to have a look at this saw. So event number 2, folks, stock saw. Let's see if we can get a picture of this beast. Oh, no, it doesn't quite come up. But before you get started, Ben, we're going to talk about, we're going to get you to explain what is exactly the stock saw. There it is.
Yeah. So the stock saw, it basically just tests operator proficiency, more or less. And it's very much a mental game as well, because, there's so many different things that can go wrong. And even just little things from listening to the RPMs while you're making your 2 cuts, and you also have to make those 2 cuts within 4 inches, or I think 10 centimeters for the World Championships, because it's all metric over there. And I guess technically it's metric here too, but it's just, anyone in the world can go to their local steel dealer and buy the chainsaw that we're running here. Yeah, so this is a steel MS661. Some of them say Magnum, some of them that's kind of just a branding or local area thing. But it's just a chainsaw taken right off the shelf, brand new bar and chain. Everything's matched, so the chainsaws are revving at the exact same tack speed, and it's like I said, it's just testing operator proficiency.
Just as this is what they call foreshadowing, Ben. We're going to see another saw event later that you cannot go to Home Depot and buy.
Very correct.
But these ones, it's a test of operating this particular machine with finesse, proficiency, and that's what we're going to see here. So you got to make, I think, 2 cuts.
2 cuts. Yep.
2 cuts.
It's a hots are running or hot start. So they'll say 15 seconds to warm up. We yank the pull cord and wind the saws out, get them revved up, and then they're sitting on the deck running, and then we put our hands on the block, and they'll say, stand to your timber, 3, 2, 1, go. And at go, you just go down, pick up the saw, make one cut down through the block, and then you do a changeover is what we call it, and then one cut up through coming up through the block.
Do you remember, Ben, off the top of your head, how much these weigh?
It's about
15 pounds?
Probably between 12 and 18 pounds. 15 is probably a pretty accurate.
And the horsepower you're dealing with there? 7?
I can't remember exactly how many cc's. It's between like 75 and 95 cc's. So
cc's.
Yeah, and
okay.
As far as horsepower, I can't quite remember exactly how much is in there, but it's a lot less than the next one.
Sure.
Chainsaw event.
And I think maybe the best to put it in real world terms, this is a pretty typical chainsaw.
This is a very typical chainsaw. It's on the larger end of the spectrum of chainsaws. So this chainsaw generally isn't run by like quote unquote your weekend warrior that needs to just cut up some, a few chunks of firewood for the fall or whatever. This is generally run by arborists, guys who run, in the logging or forestry business, or people like my dad who have a chainsaw safety training course that he puts on. So it's on the bigger end of things. It's got a lot of power for a chainsaw, but yes, it is. Anyone can go and buy this saw.
Gotcha. Well, let's have a look, and you can do the play-by-play here. We're learning what's going on through your mind, what's going through your body, whatever you feel like talking about. This is a quick one, but folks, we'll just watch the second event, which is the stock saw.
It's mostly just trying to calm my nerves. There's a bunch of different things. There's a line across the top of the block. I got to make sure that all 8 of my fingers are across that line before they say go. And I'm just focusing on the top handle, making sure that I go down, grab it, and pick it up. And right now I'm listening to it, trying to maximize the RPMs, do a decently quick changeover, and then same thing, RPMs as we go up through. I was happy. I could see the line. I knew I had a lot of room left to make a third cut if need be. But last year in 2023, I actually cut over the line, which is a disqualification. Like you have to make both of your cuts within the 10 centimeters that they give you. And at this point, I haven't seen a yellow flag. So a yellow flag just means that they're going to review something within the heat. And depending on whose side the yellow flag is on, that's the athlete that they'll be reviewing. So I haven't seen a yellow flag yet, and I am elated because I'm thinking I just came from, on an underhand, that was my personal best time, and now I am currently not disqualified in stock saw. So there's I'm just like one event at a time. That's all I'm thinking. And now I'm like, okay, that one's done. Time to get ready for standing block.
Standing block. Why don't we jump right into the standing block? So I'm going to cue it up here. I think this is a good spot to see the standing block. Oh, look how good that turned out. And before we get started, Ben, how about just tell us, okay, what are we going to see here? What is the third event?
Yeah.
Standing block chop. What is this?
Yeah, so the Timber Sports World Championship runs in with two cuts, so like 3 rounds. So the first round is the 3 events, the underhand, the stock saw, and the standing block. The standing block is simulating felling a tree before crosscuts and chainsaws. So it's just
because, like you said at the beginning, it's all based on. This is why they call it the original extreme sport. It's based on what the loggers used to do back in the day. So This is before the time of any kind of modern equipment. How would you knock a tree down?
Exactly.
This is how you do it.
You're going to see some very specialized equipment used to knock this down. But yeah, so there's a lot of angles, a lot of lines and physics that kind of go into this. You can see I'm kind of looking at the block here. You can very faintly see some blue lines that I marked on the block, and those are similar to the underhand. Those are just the guidelines. So generally speaking, the fastest way, like I said, with the underhand, is 45 degrees, and you try to mark your log up about the same size as the diameter. So the diameter of this log is 12 inches, whatever that is metrically, and then so the size of the width of the lines that I'm drawing is about 12 inches. So there's also like kind of a safety aspect. Something that a lot of people don't know is like I'm actually wearing chainmail under my pants and under my sneakers.
Wow.
So up to my knee, I've got chainmail, and I've got like a half chainmail sock on as well. And
just in case of accidents.
oh yeah, no pun intended. But that yeah, and then just how I stand. So kind of the stance there allows for decent hip activation, like for twisting my hips to maximize the power, and it also allows for if I were to hit the block and have the axe glance down, it would actually go in between my legs versus into my leg.
Ben, you just mentioned you're hitting on all the key points, man. You just mentioned hip power. I'm going to say this is my favorite event. This is my favorite event, the standing block chop. Because what we're going to see here, I mentioned earlier, Ben, about these 3 planes of human movement.
Right.
I think this is the coolest one. This is the one that's most transferable to sports. What we're going to see here with the standing block chop is movement through what they call the transverse plane. Now, again, I gave him my analogy of the glass down through the body this way.
Right.
Now we're going to think about if the glass cut your body in half at the waist, or another way, pretend you got chopped in half by an elevator.
Okay.
If that helps you. And the reason why this is so cool, because like you said, Ben, now we're getting into the transfer. The plane is meant to separate the lower body from the upper body.
Okay.
And combining the two is how we generate power. So what we're going to see here is movement through this transverse plane that is applicable to, off the top of my head, taking a slap shot in hockey, swinging a baseball bat, throwing a baseball, throwing anything, swinging a golf club, swinging a tennis racket, throwing a punch in martial arts. All these things involve the transfer of power from the lower half to the upper half, as is so crucial in this and all these sports I just mentioned. Doing so, Ben, with power. All kinds of super athletic implication for this one. My favorite event of them all, I think.
It's also my favorite too.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
Ben, I tell you, you and I are on the same wavelength. So let's see, standing block chop. Let's start it up here, and you can describe again what you're thinking in this event, what is happening, whatever comes to mind, because we're going to see some real cool chopping here as I hit play.
And just kind of basically just lining up, getting the spacing right, trying to stay loose. If you get really tense, I mean, I knew I was going to try to go for it pretty quick, but I put one hit up, one hit down, and then that kind of, like with the underhand, it tells me where I'm at. I didn't entirely follow my plan on the front. I put 7 hits. I meant to put 8.
We're on the same length, man. Keep going. That was going to be one of my questions, actually. We're going to watch the replay of this as well. But one of my questions was going to be, when you go into this, you have a strategy, how many hits you're going to put in?
Mm-hmm.
So and you said it didn't work out that way, so why didn't it work out that way?
Generally speaking, on a 12-inch block, an 8-hit front gives you options in the back. And this was a really, really nice piece of wood. And I also just kind of actually lost my head a little bit as I got towards the center of the block. But I put 1 hit up, 1 hit down, and the slab came off, and then 2 hits up, 2 hits down. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I could see my near center line on the block, and I'm like, it looks like I'm halfway. So I just put an up driver on the back. So basically all that does is it, like, think of a tree as a straw, right? So it's just all the wood fibers. You're basically just trying to sever it, and you don't actually want your cuts to meet, because that's a very fine margin of error. You actually want your cuts to be offset a little bit, and it'll help the block come off. You can drive more wood that way. And so I only put 7 in, and then went around to the back, and I put same thing, 1 up, 1 down. And basically the options are, when you put an 8 hit, or which I was aiming for, I was aiming to put an 8 hit, but ended up doing 7, gives you the options of, do I put 2 hits up and then try to drive it? Do I put 1 hit up, 1 hit down, and then a hit on my near, and then try to drive it? Later, I think the next heat was Cody Steers. He just put 1 hit up, and then he drove it off in, I think he put 3 in the back. And anyway, he Cody won the standing block, but this came off. What I probably could have done better, aside from actually putting 8 in the front of the block and not 7, I could have done one up in the back. I could have done one up, one down, then one up on my near, and then just drove it, because the way it worked out here, I put 2 up. After I did my 1 and 1, I did 2 up, and then my first down hit, the axe came through the block and actually kind of surprised me, because I didn't think it was that close to being ready to drive off. And then, so that was it's about like half a second or whatever, but I was extremely happy with how this chop went. And one of the funny things about Timber Sports is that you can be extremely happy with how things go, and you're always like, well, I could have done this better. And I just talk for, a minute and a half, 2 minutes of what I think I could have done better with a chop that is my personal best in this wood size. So
fantastic stuff, Ben. Let's keep watching. There's some pretty cool replays coming up. And as we're watching the replay, I was going to ask, do you use the same axe for this and the underhand chop?
No, I tried a different axe. The axe that I used here was one that I had used in years prior to this year in 2024 in France. The wood that we chop over there is kind of like a cottonwood hybrid poplar, and it sucks a lot of grit and silica up into the actual wood fiber, so it'll take the edge off your axe. So like, we're trying to get a razor sharp edge, and then the edge is gone after we chop the blocks. But the other thing is it doesn't really like a super fresh axe. So the axe I used in the underhand, I stuck twice, I think, and I'm not sure if that was just my axe placement, or if it was just the fact that it was a fresh axe. So I just went with one that we call it wood polish, but it had been used in this wood before.
Gotcha. And here we are in slow-mo. These are fantastic visuals, man. This sport is just so many of these cool visuals. How hard are you swinging that axe? Again, percent to 1 rep max. This is how hard? That's
like 98, 99% as hard as I can swing it. As fast as I can swing it, too.
As fast as you can swing.
Yeah.
Ben, the same language, you hear in like sports like sprinting. You go as hard as you can, as fast as you can. A lot of this stuff is just so applicable. What a great way to pause here. So, all right, Ben, we got 3 of 6. We're halfway done. The 2024 World Championships, and they eliminate some people now. Is that right? You explained the 12 guys who started. What happens here?
Yeah, so after the first 3 events, you accumulate points in every event depending on where you place in that event. So I placed second in the stock saw, so I would have got 11 points because there was 12 guys. So first gets 12, last place gets 1, unless you disqualify, and the disqualification is 0 points. So at this point, Steel will tally up all the points for all the competitors, and then unfortunately, the way that they do the championship now is that they'll actually eliminate the bottom 4. So 2023, I was one of the bottom 4 that got eliminated after this round.
Good to know.
So
that's part of the story.
I was elated to be going into the second round. So I've been really, the next event is the single buck. I've been really, really blessed at the single buck, and I was just looking forward to getting to run my saw.
So this guy says he's been blessed. He's exaggerating. He's the world record holder in this event. You got to call it like it is, Ben. This is your not your favorite event, though. Interestingly enough.
No, oddly enough.
But there's no human being walking the face of the earth as of right now that can do this event any faster than Ben. Okay, so we set the stage. This is, folks, again, we're learning things here about sports science, and there's a human drama component unfolding as well here. Unbelievable stuff, man. I love talking, Ben, to people like you with these stories about sports and science. Anyway, so we're halfway through the competition. 4 competitors are eliminated.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's 8 guys still standing, and we got 3 events left. And we got, just so happens, one of the leadoff 3 is the event that Ben's the world champion in. So I'll stop talking. You tell me what's going to happen here. What is this event? What are we going to watch here?
So this is what we call the single buck, the one-man crosscut. It also is called the misery whip because this is, of all of the events, this is the most total body exhausting one. And it's because uh, you said the transverse plane. This one
Yep.
utilizes that one pretty aggressively.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It
So
does.
you're pushing right from your
And
toes all the way to your fingertips.
I think you're pulling too, Ben. Are you?
Yep.
I was just
Yep.
watching. Like it's a push and a pull.
Yep. 100%.
So like everything's happening here, man.
Yeah. So the other thing, like I said, I'm stoked to be in the second round, and I'm still just I'm not trying to look at points. I'm just trying to look at when my next heat is and what stand I'm going to be on. So I think I was on stand B here, and just making sure all the gear's ready to roll. I'm wearing I think these are football cleats with the plastic cleats cut off and metal logger spikes drilled into them just for additional grip because personally I just like having that kind of connection to the deck. And basically just kind of mentally thinking like there's a lot of things that can go wrong in this one as well. I mean, there's stuff that can go wrong everywhere, but this one is there tends to be a decent amount of finesse that you kind of need to have, or else we call it hanging a raker. But basically all it is you've got teeth that they're offset, and they basically cut a channel down through the log, and then the raker comes along and cleans up that chip that they cut, or cleans up the wood that they've kind of freed up. And if you change your angles like severely or aggressively, sometimes that raker will hang up on wood fibers that aren't caught, and it can pop the cookie in half. It can, your hands can fly off the saw. It can spring you backwards if you're really not ready for it. So I'm, basically just, they give you 1 inch to make your starter cut, and then the circumference of the starter cut is 12 inches or about like 30 centimeters. So I'm just, we also have to do our start and prep before they say go in about 60 seconds. So I'm just kind of going through in my head what I'm going to try to do after, and that's basically just run it as fast and as smooth as I can.
And the saw, talk about the saw. I love giving a shout out. This is Canadian made, I think, eh, Ben?
It is, yeah. It comes from Saint Etienne de Lauzon in Quebec. JP Mercier. He's
Mercier.
Yeah, he's one of the best saw filers in the world. This is actually its 10th anniversary. So my brother and I bought this saw 10 years ago. Phenomenal saw. It's the one I set the world record with. And we call it a 3-cutter. So basically there's on each cutting tooth, there's 3 teeth. So they're kind of offset like this, and then they'll be offset like that as it goes down through the block. And then there's the rakers as well. It's 6'3", and basically this is after, historically, this is after they used the axe to buck the trees into length. So now you're actually using a crosscut. Traditionally, it would have been 2 men, so there would have been another handle on the other end, and they would have just cut the logs up to go to the mill that way. This is very, very different. Well, it's not very different, I shouldn't say, from the traditional saws, but everything that we use now is specialized and tuned to competition.
Speaking of, let's have a look in real world time here. Ben, you can tell us what we're seeing as you begin the single buck. So this is when you're just getting it set up, I think first.
Yeah, so it's we call it doing our starter cut, but basically it just sets the saw down, and I'm looking at kind of the position of the log, and also trying to make sure that my saw is as perpendicular to it as possible, because I mean, obviously the fastest way through a log is straight, right? And right there I just flipped it around because there's wood chips that are still in the curve, or the cut, or my starter cut. I'm just cleaning it out. I'm also making everyone else that's watching me panic, because they're thinking, okay, Ben,
Something's wrong.
Well, because I can't remember if it's 30 seconds or 60 seconds. I'm pretty sure it's 60 seconds for setup. But basically, like, if you're not ready to go at 60 seconds, they just say, stand your timber, 3, 2, 1, go, and you got to go. So I'm just like, don't hang up, basically. So full strokes. And when I'm cutting, I think near wood and far wood. So when I pull, I'm torquing on the handle to try to cut out my near wood aggressively. And then when I reach the back, I lift up just a little bit. We call it opening a window. And then because the saw has like a rounded belly, I just push and I'm thinking far wood and I'm pushing off my back leg. And also just trying not to puke. It's a sprint. It's only like 11-12 second sprint, but just because everything right from your shoulder wrist joint all the way down through your ankles and your toes, there's maximized effort throughout this entire event.
Yeah, that looked pretty gnarly, I think. In terms of the physicality involved, when I was watching, I said, I think that one probably would be the most physically taxing. But Ben, what we're going to watch now, this is the 5th event. To me, this is the most visually captivating of all the events that we're going to see. From a spectator point of view, we're going to watch event number 5, the springboard.
Yeah.
So let me just set this up here. And
it's also
while
the most
doing
cardiovascularly taxing.
Well, it's the longest one too, Ben.
Yeah.
Right? It's the longest of them all by far. So let's have, I don't know, while I'm setting it up, maybe you could, before we see it's hard to explain what this is going to be, but just give it a shot, Ben, and tell people what they're going to see with the springboard.
Yeah, so historically, this one, it was used when you had a really large tree. And when you have a really large tree, as it gets down closer to the ground, it's called butt flare or root swell. And most crosscut saws or axes, it's a lot more wood to cut. So guys back then, they would cut notches in the tree, and then they would actually build something of a scaffolding to get up above that, so that you're not cutting all this extra wood that's not going to be used at the mill. So you're basically just saving yourself a whole lot of work. This one, you're cutting a pocket that is ideally 4 hits, sometimes 6. And you put a board with a specialized clip on it. So we call it a springboard shoe, but it really is just kind of a clip. It sort of curves up a little bit, and then with the angles that you're trying to achieve with your springboard pocket, that clip sits in there, and then you jump up on that board, and then you make a second pocket, and there's a block that's secured to the top of the pole. And once you get on your second board, then you chop it down, similar to the standing block. The only difference is it's, you can't move your feet as much, and you don't turn around to the other side. You just switch hit or slice. So the other thing we're playing with here is it's also double points. So after they eliminated 4 guys from the first round, they then doubled the points. So there's 8 guys, but first place gets 16 points.
And after this event, we're going to eliminate more guys.
That's correct. Yeah. So after springboard, they then eliminate the bottom 2 guys, and then take 6 guys into hot saw.
And before we do the springboard, I like this shot too, Ben. This is the crowd in France.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 5,000 people there almost. This is it looks like a really cool.
It was
venue.
Fantastic. Oh yeah, they were having a blast, and it was a lot of fun. Oh man, it was really, really awesome to compete there. The crowd was fantastic.
All right, so let's skip ahead a little tiny bit, and we're going to see the first of the springboards.
This is the same as single buck. There's a 1 minute setup time. So my brother Nathan brought out my springboards, and he just set them against the tree. So I have to position them to where my pockets are going to be set, and then basically just set my spare axe aside. So you can see Jack there; he's setting his board where he wants it. And then we also have other just little sandbags, but basically, right there, just using it so that my boards don't slide out of the way when I'm hitting the pole. But this one, I'm not great with heights, so this has kind of been my nemesis for the longest time. But
because the guys get up there pretty high. And
yeah,
this is when I was asking.
Standing about 6-7 feet off the ground, and which isn't that high until you consider the fact that you're swinging a razor blade.
Oh yeah. Wait till you see this, folks. This is unbelievable stuff. And it also, Ben, we were talking about the size of these guys who have to hop up from board to board, and then, as you say, when you're up there, you're swinging a razor blade. Yeah.
So it took me a while to adjust to being a little bit heavier, because I was, 160, 180 for the longest time. But there I just put 4 hits in.
4 hits?
Yep. And it went pretty well. And then I ended up doing, I think, 6 hits on my top board. So you do one down, one flat, and you just kind of alternate down and flat, and then that allows for the angles.
Look at that.
Yeah, allows for the angles of the springboard shoe to sit in there. And then now it's basically just, Sid the Sloth chopping, because I'm still a little bit nervous. I'm still working on it, still trying to, get more comfortable on the top board.
It doesn't look that comfortable, Ben.
It's not.
I wanted to pause it. You have to do a step over here at some point also.
Yeah, so
I don't know if I can catch it.
At
So
about
you're balancing on that board.
Yeah, at about 3/4 of the way through the block, you basically just
There you go.
have to chop it from the other side. So I switch hit. I've tried slicing. You can see in the background Jack is slicing a little bit, but basically it's just taken quite a bit of time to train to hit with as much power as I possibly can on the reverse, because obviously it's not my natural swing side.
It's like switch hitting in baseball, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you can do that. Other athletes don't do that. We used to call it batting cross-handed, but you
Okay.
are a conventional switch hitter. Is that right? Like
Yes.
you change your hands over.
Yeah. Yeah, and I used to do that when I played baseball a little bit, but then I wasn't getting quite the results I was looking for when I would switch hit, so I just kind of stayed on my natural side.
Okay. Should we jump forward, Ben?
Absolutely.
Let's jump forward. How many events have gone by?
5, so we're
That's right.
heading
And how
into the
many-
6th one.
The last one, you mean?
Yep.
Now, let's tell the fans here. Of course, we said, we teased that there's going to be more guys eliminated,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
You're
we're
not-
now down to 6. We're now down to 6.
and you're one of them.
That's correct.
You're one of
Yeah.
them. So, go on. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say it when just the way things shook out through the day. Very blessed to actually be leading going into the hot saw. Yeah. So I was
Leading, you say?
what was I? I think it was 7, 8 point. I was 7 or 8 points ahead of Jack, who was in second place currently. So now we're down to 6 guys, but they triple the points. So first place is going to get 18, and then down on through the number system there.
So, folks, you're hearing all this. Let's set the story straight. There's 6 competitors left. This is the World Championships, by the way. Ben is leading the competition, and this is the last event.
Correct.
That's the story.
Yeah.
We are going to finish our story, Ben. We're going to get to the drama here, but you're leading in the last event of the day. But before we get to the drama, we got to still talk about some of the science at work here. And let's talk about the event itself before we get to the human drama component. Because you're dealing with, as you can see here in this picture, this event's called a hot saw. And now we got a monstrosity of a machine, eh, Ben? This is, tell us about this saw and just what it is and how it's different than the one we saw previously.
So this is definitely not stock. This is Frankenstein's chainsaw. This is a 325 Rotax snowmobile engine that has been
Snowmobile engine.
it has been modified
Snowmobile engine.
to have a bar and chain on it, and I can't remember exactly what the carburetor system is on it, but it's basically
It's open, right? They suck.
Yep, it is. It is an open carburetor. I was trying to think of what the carburetor came off of.
Oh, I see.
But it's 300,
some kind of race car,
325.
we'll say.
Actually, there's a guy in the East Coast here that runs he runs an engine off of a racing dune buggy from California. So his is about 390 cc's, and the saw I'm running here is 325 cc's.
And these are a bit individual too, right?
These are 100% individual.
And like Nate's is even more monstrous, I think, than... Is that
Nate's
true?
is 400 plus. Yeah, the guy you can see there up in the top corner, his is 400 cc plus. Now there are there's one hot saw producer in California, Dennis Cahoon, DC Hot Saws, and most of the saws that come out of there are generally similar, but everyone has different things that they prefer with their hot saw. Some guys have carbon fiber like frames. Some guys like their pipe done up a little bit differently. Some guys will do their chain differently. Some guys run different bars. There's a few different customizable things on these. Then there's, the jets in the carburetor and things like that. Like we actually don't have jets in our carburetor. My brother Nathan and I bought this saw together, but my dad actually filed the chain on it. So, it's a hand filed chain. Some guys use grinders, but this chain is hand filed, and all the depth gauges are, I can't remember if they're 0.45 or 0.045 or 0.054, something like that. Like they're all done the same, as similar as you can get with hand filing.
Sounds cool. Very, very, very cool. This is like sports science engineering, somewhat beyond my scope of expertise, but just really, really interesting. Now, speaking of interesting, we talked about the saw itself. We can see it. It's an amazing piece of machinery. So, Ben, you got to describe the event. What are we going to see here? What is the purpose of it? What are you trying to do? What is the objective here of the hot saw event?
So the main objective of hot saw is make 3 cuts.
Three cuts. So we had 2 in the first chainsaw. Now
Correct.
We're doing 3.
Yeah. So it's a cold start, as opposed to the warm or running start. So this saw starts with a throwaway pull cord. Same thing. You get 60 seconds to warm it up. So I go up. I'm checking, make sure that my kill switch is on. My decompression buttons are pressed. My oiler is on. My throttle lock is on, and then they'll say, 60 seconds, warm up your saw. I'll grab the pull cord, fire it up, rev it so that the engine and the pipe and everything is warmed up. Then I'll shut it off, re-push all my decompression, make sure my kill switch is on, make sure my throttle lock is back on, and then I'll rewind the starter cord, and then make sure that that's tethered because it's a throwaway. A few years ago, they used to actually run 2 guys at the same time, and a throwaway cord, sometimes if it wasn't tethered, it could land in the other competitor's area. So then I put marks on the log, make sure that my where I want to aim is good to go, and then basically I'm just try to get my stance ready so that I'm not pulling my back out, because this saw is about 65 pounds.
65 pounds.
Yeah. So then once I get
with the snowmobile engine.
Yeah, with a snowmobile, it is kind of crazy, like really when you say it out loud. And then I got the same spikes on that I was wearing for single buck, and then I've also got chainsaw pants, eye and ear protection as well. And it's just waiting till they say go, and then I'll reach down, crank the starter cord, throw that away, and then pedal to the metal. So
let's say go, eh?
Yeah, sounds good.
Let's say go. And keep in mind, let's set the stage again. This is the last event of the whole competition, by the way, because you're the last. This is the last thing that happens at the
This is the very last thing. Yeah.
Last thing that happens at the 2024 Steel Timber Sports World Championships. You can't make drama like this. Ben's in first place, and he's the last competitor. Let's watch what happens, Ben. And however you want to describe this, you can describe it. Let's watch the last event, the 2024 World Championships. Ben Cumberland in the hot saw. Here we go.
There, you can see I'm just kind of placing it right where I want to be. Right there, what I was doing was just making sure that the pull cord was as tight as it could be, because you're trying to pull it hard and aggressively and try to get as many rotations out of it. Right there, I just tethered the pull cord, and so now I'm just kind of making sure that things are out of the way, and I'm just basically just spacing the saw to where it needs to be, angling the pull cord handle so that it's ready to go. Do a little double check on the kill switch, and now I'm just waiting for go. So I'm making sure all 8 of my fingers are across the line, and now I'm just focusing on the 2 top handles, because that's a grab and go, and then full throttle, pushing up, and then right there, I was trying to line it up, because the first cookie, so we call them cookies, and I wonder how far do you want me to go back with what I'm thinking right there?
You want to watch it again? Yeah, go back. Do you want to watch it again, or do you want to?
We can watch it again if you want, but basically what I'm getting at is, excuse me, the way the points were working out,
Okay, go. Yeah.
the way the points were working out, I was going to be on the podium regardless of the results of the hot saw. What happened was, as you can see, the first cookie that's kind of laying on my foot, that's a little thick.
That's pretty thick.
Yeah. So the second one's just about right. And then I'm trying to line it up for the third one because I'm trying to get a complete cookie. So one of the ways that you can disqualify in hot saw is if your cookies aren't the full circumference of the log. So I'm just trying to squeeze another cookie out. And unfortunately, if you hit play, you'll see right about
you could see it
right
at the
there.
Yeah. It landed in the wrong way, but as it was falling, you could see.
That's all right. I blew out the bottom of the third cookie, and that happened because I was trying to race. Now, like I was saying with the points, I was going to be on the podium regardless of how hot saw shook out, and I'm very, very thankful for how that landed. Now, my brother Nathan, helping me backstage, he's not a points guy. He doesn't do points. He doesn't want to know. He just wants to
perform.
do the best. Yes, the best that he can. Now, there was also one of the members of Team Canada, fantastic guy, Marcel Dupuis. He had media pass. He was doing media stuff because he speaks French and we're in France, so obviously they want him to do media. So Marcel said, "You are going to be on the podium regardless of how this shapes out," as I said before, but you have to cut. I had to make a cut that was faster than
6.69, I think.
Yes, I think it's 6.69, which was by Mikkel Dubicki from Poland. And the fastest that I've ever cut this size wood in my life was, I think, a 6.8, and that was last year. So I figured that if I wanted to win gold, I was going to go full throttle there. That's perfect stop right there. That's an incomplete cookie right there.
Yeah.
And if I had have seen the text from my wife, I probably would have done it a little bit differently. But I was thinking,
always follow your wife's advice, Ben.
I agree. My wife is a very wise woman, and I was just thinking, I've got to race it if I want to get gold. So if I'm going to be on the podium, regardless of the outcome, I'm going to go for it.
Good thinking. I love that thinking.
So, and the other thing is...
just make everyone's aware of that. So he's got a bronze medal, basically. But you just said your attitude is, let's put everything in toward getting the gold here.
100%. Yeah. Because I wanted to win. Like, any of the guys that are there, they're all there to win, right? Like, that's the main purpose of the competition.
Sure.
But I did have the chance to win, and there was, God had a reason for this, and like I said, I am very, very thankful for how everything worked out, and I honestly couldn't be happier with bronze. So, actually, this disqualification technically put me in second, tied with Jack Jordan. So I was actually tied with Jack as far as total points. But the way that Steel does the tiebreakers is that they add up your total event or times through the day. So your time in your underhand, time of stock saw, time of standing, single buck springboard, and hot saw. The disqualification is a 3-minute time. So the tiebreaker went to Jack Jordan for the silver medal. So I was tied for second with a disqualification in the hot saw.
Unbelievable story. Now, there's another part of the story, and you hit on it. So you know at this point that you're disqualified. The cookie is incomplete, right?
Yeah.
Folks, look, I try to, in these podcasts, to do a little bit more than just sports science. Watch this display of sportsmanship. Listen, I don't know if that would bring a tear to your eye, but this is a guy who knows he was the gold medal winner going into this event. He knows he's been disqualified there, so he's not the gold medal winner, and that's your reaction, Ben?
I know Nate. I knew Nate from previous competitions. I know he's a fantastic guy. I knew I didn't have room to make another cut. I knew it wasn't fast enough, and I was also just thankful to be in this position. And one thing that we've always tried to do growing up And anytime we were competing, we've always asked that God, like we would pray before a competition, we would ask that God would make us humble if we win and gracious if we lose. And there's no reason to be upset. I went for it. I went into this cut trying to win the gold medal, and I didn't. So all credit where credit's due. Nate had a really good day, so he's a new world champion. There's nothing else to do.
Not enough humility in the world today, man. Watch again here. 2 seconds after, this is the reaction. I don't know what to say. Anyway, like I said, you can't make this stuff up. This is human drama. This is sports science. It's a combination of them all. But on that note, last thing we'll say, Ben, we're almost done here. Our time is almost up. We are going to, if you have time, though, we're going to play 10.
Time.
We're going to play 10
time.
questions.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
You've been waiting to play 10 questions. It's Canada's new.
I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm actually very curious. I'm very curious to see how this is going to go.
It's just it's almost as good as the Timber Sports World Championships is my 10 questions. No, that's a lie. That's not true at all. But anyway, the last thing we'll say before we leave the World Championships. So this is the way you finish. Look, it's a bronze medal.
Mm-hmm.
Is there unfinished business for Ben Cumberland? Maybe in the year 2025.
Well, I would like to say there are. We'll see what God has in store for me. But I would be lying if I said that one of my goals within Timber Sports is not to come back with the gold medal in the individuals world championship. I'd also like to win it with the team as well, and we'll see how that shakes out. Yeah, God's just really blessed me at this sport, and I couldn't say thank you enough to the people that have helped me get here, the people that help with wood, the people that help train, the people that even just people like yourself showing interest in what we have considered such a niche sport. It's encouraging, it's motivating, and it makes me want to represent Canada again.
What a sentiment. What a sentiment. All right. Let's get started here. I don't want to take up too much of your time here, Ben, but we do have time for 10 questions.
I'm having a blast.
We're talking about, look, these are great stories, man. These are great stories. And you called it a niche sport, which it is, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, look, we talked about the value that this thing has, transferability to other sports, transferability to life in general. And by the way, stick around when I do my supplemental video for this. It's all about just the value. We didn't even talk about, Ben, about what I call the ethos, of timber sports, which is, in my humble opinion, getting back to nature, being out in the wilderness.
Continuing history. Yeah.
So anyway, stick around for my supplemental video.
Community,
anyway,
that's another big one. Yeah.
Unbelievable benefits. All right. On that note, let's get started here. 10 questions. The idea, we're going to have a bit of fun, Ben. Just short answers off the top of your head, whatever comes to mind. And some of this is getting to know who is Ben Cumberland a little bit better. And my question number 1 is very, very insightful towards this objective. So I'll give you the background. When I was emailing Ben about the potential of doing this, Ben, I don't even think you realized you did this, but you dropped a few, I'll call them interesting phrases in the body of your emails.
Oh, boy.
And I said, what kind of character am I dealing with here? Who is this Ben Cumberland? I'm going to read some of them. Okay, folks. We're talking about timing for the interview, and Ben says, quote, "The kicker will be finding some solid internet for the duration of the interview, as I live practically in the middle of nowhere." That was one line. And then he, about again, finding times and being flexible, he said, again, direct quote from Ben here. Well, I'm generally either working in the woods, cutting trees, or milling/sharpening. So I'm quite flexible and can fit around your schedule. Ben, put all those together. What kind of guy is Ben in relation to these types of quotes?
I'm a seasonal worker for the government, so I'm more or less just kind of finding things to fill my time throughout the winter. But one of those things is a bandsaw mill that my wife and I purchased with a brother-in-law, and I have to sharpen the bandsaw blades because we're cutting cedar, which is pretty gritty as well. So that's That's what that is. And then I also have 100 acres that my wife and I purchased a year ago. So I gotta prep that and get ready to build a house.
Fantastic. All right, question number 2. This might be more straightforward, maybe. Question number 2. Your nickname is the Captain. Why?
Because back in 2014, wow, 10 years ago, when Marvel released the movie Captain America: Winter Soldier, the way that Chris Evans had his hair done in that movie was similar to how I was getting my hair cut as well. And at a couple local shows, they're like, "Oh, hey, you kind of look like Captain America." And I'm thinking, "Oh boy, here we go." And some people started trying to say like Captain Can America and Captain Canada, and eventually we just stuck with the Captain.
I got to be honest with you, that is not the answer I was expecting. But that's why his nickname is the Captain, folks. All right, question number 3. Ben, you proudly hail from the great province of New Brunswick. So does my wife, by the way. Did I tell you that?
That's fantastic. No, you didn't. That's fantastic.
Been there many, many times. So, question number 3. If someone is looking to visit the great province of New Brunswick, as they should, give them a recommendation. What should they see?
The Fallbrook Falls right around Boys Town are pretty incredible. They're probably the highest falls in New Brunswick. There's the beautiful town of St. Andrews. There's also Fundy National Park and the little village of Alma that are down in the southwest coast. There's also the incredible beaches that are along the eastern side of the province, up along through the Acadian territory. Then we've also got Mount Carlton, which is the highest peak in the province, and absolutely stunning views from there.
Lots of things to see, folks. Go see New Brunswick. Question number 4. Speaking of New Brunswick, so as I indicated, I have somewhat of an impressive network of New Brunswickers. Mm-hmm. So before this interview, I reached out to them. I said, hey, just send me an email, bullet points. If someone said to you, New Brunswick culture, what comes to mind? Okay, so I'm drawing on some of their expertise, Ben. I'm just going to put these 3 words out there to you and see what they mean to you. If they have any meaning, I don't know. This is from a legitimate, genuine New Brunswicker. Talk about the 3 words: church, basement, suppers.
Oh man, I grew up in a United Baptist church. I still actually go to a United Baptist church, and one of the fantastic things that we do to fellowship at church, and that I grew up doing, was church basement suppers. And if it wasn't the church that I was going to, it was one of the churches in the community of Keswick Ridge, and just being able to meet and fellowship with a lot of the people that you know in the community, in the neighborhood, and reach out to those who may not actually go to the church, but just, like around this time of year, like we're doing this close to Christmas, being able to bring a little bit of joy to someone who may not have it this time of year. It's a pretty integral part of growing up, and what I value now.
Well, you mentioned more than once here in this interview, community is the word. And by the way, that suggestion came from someone who didn't know anything about you. They just said New Brunswick, and they said ask him about church basement supper. Anyway, that was question number 4.
That's awesome.
Questions 5 through 7, Ben. We're getting. I told you I'm a registered dietitian by trade. Mm-hmm. Actually, question 4 had a nutritional slant as well, but these next 3 are really nutrition based. Question number 5, Ben. What is the tastiest wild game animal?
For me, it's probably moose. However, I am very partial to deer because I'm an avid bow hunter, and I do know that my wife cooks a very mean bear pot roast.
Moose was your number 1, but he gave a shout out to deer and bear pot roast. I've never had bear. Beer, you said, right?
Bear. Yeah. American black bear.
Yeah.
Ursus americanus.
I also, Ben, listen, I didn't know you bow hunted, but I said, if I ask him this question, he'll have an answer. Question number 6. When was the last time you ate fiddleheads?
It would have been May or June, because my brother, Nathan, and his wife are avid fiddleheaders. We don't have a huge access to them here, but they are very gracious with giving us a feed or 2 of them.
There you go. That's a New Brunswick thing too, folks. And so is this is obvious. This is more well known about New Brunswick. The 7th question, also nutrition related. Best way to eat a lobster?
Oh, man. It depends on if you're fond of carbs or not. If you like carbs, then you're going to want them in a lobster roll. However, just throwing it in a pot of salt water, boiling it, and then cracking it around the table with friends and family is fantastic.
My wife, who is again, native New Brunswicker, would tell you the lobster roll is the superior way. All right, we got, here's these next two questions. Well, this next one is every single guest, Ben, no matter who they are, gets asked this question. The next two are, let's call them from the domain of the bro science. But everyone gets asked this. Everyone gets asked this. Question number 8, what is your personal best 1 rep max bench press?
245, 250, I think.
245 to
250, yeah.
Everyone gets asked that, and the array of answers is hilarious. Anyway, second bro question. We're almost done. We only have one left after this. Second last question, and it's another bro question. Ben, who would win a fight? You, your brother, or your father in his prime?
Oh, man. Probably dad in his prime. Nathan's a big dude. He's about 6'3", close to 280, 290, and he's built like a tank. However, there isn't much tenacity that Nathan and I could match to dad in his prime.
Good answer. Dad in his prime. All right, so Ben, we've come to our final question, and the 10th question is, I think, a great way to conclude this interview, which has been as fantastic as I thought it would be. Question number 10. If someone is interested in pursuing all things timber sports, what's the best advice that they could follow, Ben?
Just have fun with it. One thing that I always say to anyone who's trying to get into it is just stay teachable. Always seek out the people that are winning events. Try to pick up tips, tricks, techniques from them. Reach out. Like you mentioned earlier, community is a huge part of timber sports. You can go anywhere around the world. If you're talking with someone or hanging out with someone that's in the world of timber sports, they're like, come on, let's, have a beer, or, let's go have dinner, or like you need a spot to stay, you can stay at my place, or they know someone. So the timber sports community is very, very generous. They're very kind-hearted. They're very willing to help anyone out because it's a pretty niche sport. We want the sport to grow. So people are very, very willing, myself, anyone, just reach out, let us, say, hey, I'm interested. And then we can, work from there and see what area you're in, what access you have to gear, other resources of, training partners, different things like that. So, yeah.
Ben, as you were willing to help me out by doing this interview. So we've come to the end of our time, but I just want to say with my deepest sincerity, Ben, thanks for doing this interview.
It has been an absolute honor and a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And in signing off, as I always say, let's go Canada, support Canadian athletes.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, that was fantastic.